She said routines kill passion. So I killed the routine, starting with our marriage. I was 33 when I married Ivy, and by then I had already lived what most people would call a full life. I built 2 companies from scratch, sold one of them before I was 30, invested wisely, and lived with the kind of comfort that made struggle a distant memory. I'd been married before. Briefly, my 20s were full of ambition and mistakes, and she was one of them. But I wasn't bitter about it. That marriage showed me exactly what I didn't want, predictability masquerading as compatibility. I didn't want someone who fit into my world like a calendar reminder. I wanted someone who disrupted it, rewired it, maybe even set fire to it a little. Enter Ivy. She was 24 when we got married, 20 when we met, and from the very beginning, she was chaos wrapped in silk. Ivy didn't walk into rooms, she spilled into them, barefoot half the time, humming to herself, hair tied up with something that probably started the day as a curtain sash. She was everything my world wasn't. Free, spontaneous, creative. She painted emotions, not landscapes. She danced in empty rooms just to feel the echo. Her idea of time was whenever it feels right. I should have run the other way, but I didn't. I let her in. And for a while, it was magic. I met her at a gallery I wasn't even planning to attend. A friend had asked me to come support a mutual connection, and I was half an hour late, already thinking of excuses to leave early. She was in the far corner, wearing this ridiculous oversized button-up shirt splattered with paint, sipping wine like she'd forgotten how glasses worked. She was laughing, full-on laughing at something someone said, head thrown back, hands flailing, totally unself-conscious. I watched her for 3 minutes before I realized I hadn't looked at anyone else in the room. Later that night, we found ourselves on the rooftop, both avoiding the crowd, sharing a cigarette neither of us really wanted. She asked me what I did, and when I told her I ran businesses, she blinked and said, "That sounds like a lot of math." I laughed. No one ever made me laugh in business meetings. That was the first night we talked about what we wanted from life. Not kids. Not white picket fences or planned vacations. Just space to become. I told her I wanted peace. She said she wanted freedom. Somehow, we convinced each other we could build both under the same roof. She moved in 3 months later. My penthouse looked like a hotel before she arrived, sleek furniture, neutral tones, not a single item out of place. Within a week, there were paintbrushes in the silverware drawer and dried eucalyptus hanging from every doorknob. She turned my clean, silent space into something wild and alive. I didn't just let it happen. I loved it. I came home from 12-hour meetings to the smell of incense and the sound of Miles Davis or some ambient indie artist I'd never heard of. She'd be in the middle of the floor surrounded by canvases, wearing one of my t-shirts with no pants, completely immersed in whatever world she was building that day. I had never met someone so untethered, and maybe that's what made me want to hold on so tight. We were different, but we didn't fight it. She never made me feel old, and I never made her feel naive. People questioned the age difference more than we ever did. Ivy didn't want kids. Ever. That alone eliminated half the red flags most men our age deal with in relationships. She didn't want to be a mom, didn't want to trade paint for playdates, didn't want her body or her time handed over to someone else's needs. She wanted to wake up and decide, every day, what kind of life she was going to live. And I respected that. I didn't want children either. I had no urge to pass anything on. I wanted to build something real in the moment, not for legacy. Ivy was the first woman who made that feel like a shared goal and not a negotiation. For 4 years we were together before we got married. I didn't rush it because I didn't need to. I already knew I wanted her in my life permanently by year 1, but Ivy wasn't the type to be wooed by diamond rings or beachfront proposals. She'd probably say yes if I asked her while we were brushing our teeth. So I waited until we were alone on the balcony one night, wine in hand, skyline in front of us, and asked her without a speech. No kneeling. No audience. Just me, asking her to stay for good. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. We didn't plan a big wedding. Just a weekend by the coast, a few close friends, and vows we wrote ourselves. Hers were scrawled on the back of a used envelope in watercolors. Mine were typed, printed, proofread 3 times. That was us. Chaos and calculation. Flow and frame. We joked that we were like fire and marble. She burned, I endured. In that balance, it worked. At least, for a while. I provided everything. The roof, the lifestyle, the security. Ivy didn't work a job in the traditional sense, but I never wanted her to. Her time wasn't for clocking in. It was for creating. She was a true artist, not the kind that made pretty things for Instagram, but the kind that poured herself into everything she touched. She painted, illustrated, sculpted, wrote. One week, she was designing concept album covers for an indie band. The next, she was crafting handmade journals and binding them with silk thread. I funded every part of it, not just because I could, but because I wanted to. I paid for her materials, her travel, her classes. I hired a designer to build her website, a photographer to shoot her portfolio, and even a copywriter to help with her artist statements. She never asked me to. She wasn't after money. That's what made it so easy to give. She created because it made her soul breathe. And I had the means to make sure she never had to stop. Our life was a rhythm. I woke up early, made calls, ran businesses. She slept in, wandered through daylight, filled the house with color and movement. She went to yoga, contemporary dance intensives, group therapy for creatives, energy healing, aromatherapy workshops. She called them explorations, little portals into different parts of herself. I joked that she was building a degree in expensive hobbies, but I didn't mind. I thought it made her whole. We had everything we needed. No fights about bills. No pressure to perform. I thought we had the dream. And maybe we did. At least, that's what I thought. While Ivy lived in color, I lived in numbers. My days were spreadsheets, equity reports, investment calls, and strategy decks. I owned 2 companies and had major stakes in 4 others: tech, logistics, consulting, and digital infrastructure. I started in software out of college, transitioned into consulting before I was 25, and by 30, I had exited my second startup with more money than I'd ever imagined earning. I wasn't flashy about it. I wasn't the guy buying Lamborghinis or wearing logo-heavy designer clothes. I liked efficiency, privacy, and leverage. I wore the same cut of suit to every meeting, drove a black Range Rover, lived in a penthouse that looked more like an art museum than a home. When Ivy entered my life, I was well into a stage most people don't reach until retirement: complete autonomy. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I didn't have to grind. I chose what to work on, when to work on it, and who I wanted to work with. That gave me the ultimate gift you can give someone else: freedom. And I gave all of it to her. Ivy didn't just make art. She lived it. She didn't care about selling pieces or getting gallery placements for clout. She cared about connection, mood, feeling. At first, she only created for herself, covering the apartment in canvases and hanging sketches on walls instead of paintings. But she had something, and I knew it. She had that raw, unpolished brilliance people spend years trying to manufacture. So I started pushing her. Quietly, gently. I got her a portfolio photographer, built her a clean, elegant website with her name in a serif font, ivory background, minimal layout to let the pieces speak. I hired a content strategist to help write her story, her mission, her why. I introduced her to a few boutique interior designers who were always looking for new local artists. I funded her first small event, a private pop-up showing in a converted studio space with catered wine and jazz musicians I knew through a friend. I even invited some of my high-end real estate contacts, told them her work added value to modern spaces. And it worked. Ivy didn't just sell that night, she shined. She floated across the room, explaining the inspiration behind each series like she was letting people into her diary. I stood back, watching her glow, proud to be the man in the background. I never took credit for anything, never made it about me. I just kept giving her everything she needed to rise. Eventually, she started selling commissions. Not enough to live on, but that wasn't the point. The point was that she finally believed what I already knew, that she was the real thing. I made sure her lifestyle never threatened that belief. I paid for her materials, high-grade oils, imported papers, brushes that cost more than some people's rent. I gave her a monthly allowance and told her to spend it however she wanted: self-care, inspiration, travel. I wanted her to explore, expand, evolve. And she did, but not in the direction I thought. She fell in love with flow. That was her word for it. Days without alarm clocks. Movement without goals. Experiences without measurement. I thought it was beautiful at first. She took aerial yoga classes, breathwork seminars, ecstatic dance circles, joined creative womb healing workshops, went to sound baths in candlelit studios with women named Amara and Luna. I rolled my eyes, joked about cult vibes, but deep down, I admired her ability to disappear into presence. I was always calculating. She was always feeling. I thought that balance made us stronger. But over time, something shifted. Ivy started spending less time in her studio and more time out. Her schedule became unpredictable. One day it was hot yoga at noon. Next day it was improv movement expression in a park downtown. She joined an all-women's art collective that met on Thursdays, then Fridays, then whenever. She stopped leaving notes. She stopped checking in. I didn't think anything of it. Why would I? I built this life to give her space. She was living exactly how she'd always wanted. I didn't want to be the possessive husband asking where she was every 2 hours. That wasn't who we were. I kept my head down, focused on work. I was in the middle of expanding one of my companies into a new market, flying out twice a month, navigating board negotiations, closing 2 major deals. I was tired, but I was proud. I thought we were both doing what we loved. The only thing that bothered me was how little she touched me lately. Ivy had always been tactile. She'd reach for my hand when we passed each other, brush my shoulder in the kitchen, curl up on my lap during quiet nights. Lately, nothing. She was warm in conversation, but cool in contact. Her hugs got shorter. Kisses faded into pecks. We hadn't been intimate in almost a month, which was a first. But she always had a reason. She was tired, or sore from class, or emotionally heavy from a therapy session. I didn't press. I figured it was just a phase. Everyone goes through ebbs and flows. She wasn't pulling away, just processing something. And I wanted to be respectful, supportive, safe. I didn't see the red flags because I wasn't looking for them. I was busy keeping everything else afloat, her comfort, her career, our life. I thought I was giving her the greatest gift a man could give a woman, the freedom to stay. But that only works if she actually wants to. It started with a ping, one of those harmless, forgettable messages that doesn't register as life-altering until it already is. I was in the middle of reviewing a Q3 asset report when my phone buzzed with a notification from Jared, an old college friend I hadn't heard from in months. We weren't close anymore, not in a real way, but we had enough mutuals that the message didn't feel weird. What felt weird was the screenshot he sent without a single word of context. I stared at it for a second, confused. A Tinder profile. At first, it didn't register. The photo looked professional, warm lighting, casual smile, one shoulder exposed. I almost kept scrolling, assuming he sent it by mistake. Then I saw the name. And I saw the eyes. Ivy. Wearing the yellow off-shoulder dress I bought her last spring on our trip to Sedona. Her hair was tied up the way she always did when she didn't want to look like she tried. The bio was short. Passion over perfection. I love movement, art, and deep connection. Let's make it interesting. I blinked. I read it again. Then again. My stomach dropped so fast I actually felt dizzy. My first thought wasn't anger. It was confusion. No, that can't be her. It's someone using her photo. People steal Instagram pics all the time, especially from artists. I'd seen Ivy repost her work dozens of times after other accounts cropped out her watermark. Maybe someone took it further. But then Jared followed up with another message. My buddy matched with her last night. They talked. She's local. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there staring at my screen, my hands suddenly cold despite the fact it was warm in the apartment. Ivy was out. She'd left about an hour earlier for what she called a creative immersion experience, basically some hybrid dance meditation class in a converted warehouse studio across town. She loved that place. Said the energy there helped her unlock the physical layers of intuition. I didn't even question it anymore. Her world was full of phrases like that. Half spiritual, half delusional. But this was something else. After pacing the kitchen for 10 minutes, I pulled open her Instagram. Same profile photo. Same recent posts. No signs of anyone else. Just watercolor reels and quotes about sacred creativity. I even checked her story. She'd posted a clip from the studio. She said she was at Muted Colors, people lying on mats, someone playing crystal bowls. I wanted it to be fake so badly. I wanted it to be some weird scam, some impersonator. I didn't want this to be what it was beginning to look like. But around midnight, after she got home, showered, and fell asleep in the sheets I'd bought her from a boutique in Florence, Italian cotton, because she once said sleeping should feel like floating, I quietly slipped out of bed and picked up her phone. I didn't even hesitate. No passcode. She never needed one. That used to feel like trust. Now it felt like negligence. I tapped open the app drawer and scrolled, slowly, carefully, looking for anything unfamiliar. I almost missed it. It wasn't on the home screen. It was tucked inside a folder named Utilities, The kind of digital junk drawer people throw timers and calculators into. There it was. Tinder. I felt something sink inside me. Something foundational. I tapped the icon. It opened instantly. And just like that, the truth was no longer a theory. It was a profile. Her profile. Not a clone. Not a catfish. Her. Same photos. Same smile. Same bio Jared had sent. The message tab was full. Dozens of conversations. Most were short, generic. Hey, how's your day? Love your vibe. But there was one at the top. Highlighted. Recent. A guy named Noah. 26. Personal trainer / music producer, apparently. His profile was filled with shirtless gym selfies. One photo with a motorcycle, another holding a dog. Their chat went back 2 days. He complimented her energy. She told him she liked his confidence. They talked about music, movement, astrology. Then he asked if she wanted to meet. I'm free after 5 Thursday, he wrote. Let's do 6, she replied. I know a spot. I stared at the timestamp. She sent that message 3 hours ago. She was still talking to him while lying next to me in bed, one leg curled over mine like she hadn't just made plans to betray everything we built. I closed the app, sat back. My entire chest felt tight. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was numb, disoriented, like I'd just been told gravity doesn't apply anymore. I didn't sleep. I watched her breathe. I watched her curl deeper into the blankets and mumble something soft in her sleep like it wasn't the worst night of my life. The next morning, I made her coffee like I always did. I set it down beside her sketchbook. She came out wearing one of my shirts, hair still damp from her shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize. She kissed my cheek and asked how I slept. I said I was up late working. She nodded, said she had a workshop thing that evening. I asked her what kind. She told me it was a candle-making class. Said it was therapeutic. Said she'd be back by 8. I smiled and told her to have fun. She smiled back like she deserved to. That was the moment. That exact second. That's when something inside me died. Not because she lied, but because of how easy it was for her to do it. That morning I asked her again, just to hear it. Just to look her in the eyes and see how easily the lie would fall from her lips. She was standing at the counter, spooning chia seeds into a mason jar like she was crafting a love potion, when I asked her what time the workshop started. She didn't even flinch. 6, she said cheerfully. It's this new sensory candle thing, kind of experimental. Everyone brings their own ingredients. I might do bergamot and clove. I smiled and nodded, said it sounded very her. She laughed and told me I should come next time, said it might help me open my masculine energy. The way she said it almost made me forget what I knew. Almost. But the betrayal wasn't in her words. It was in how relaxed she looked, how easily she kissed me goodbye, how she tied her hair up with that silk ribbon I brought her back from a trip to Lisbon, the one she said made her feel soft and dangerous. She had no idea I already knew exactly where she was going to be. I'd already sent her photo and the location she gave me to Marcus, a contact of mine from back when I needed quiet, competent men to handle delicate situations. He wasn't a PI by trade, just ex-military with a talent for discretion and a network that reached deeper than most corporate background checks. I gave him the details the night before. I told him, no confrontation, no intimidation, no theatrics. I just wanted confirmation. Surveillance, timestamps, and one photo. Ivy left at 4:50 p.m., exactly as she said she would. She wore the green wrap dress with the low neckline, the one that clung just right at the waist. Gold hoop earrings. That nude gloss she only wore when she was trying to look natural but calculated. She kissed me before she walked out the door, said, "Don't wait up." I told her I wouldn't. At 5:08, Marcus texted, "She's downtown." Parked at 12th and Main. Walked into Lomé. Lomé wasn't a candle workshop space. It was a trendy new lounge with live music, dim lighting, and a menu that included phrases like infused fig smoke and small batch love elixirs. I'd taken clients there. It wasn't where you went to find peace. It was where you went to be seen. I asked him to stay until she met the guy. At 5:55, he wrote, "He's here. Black tee, silver necklace, motorcycle helmet in hand. Early 20s. Looks like a musician or influencer." She stood and hugged him. Long hug. A minute later, one photo. Ivy, outside the entrance, laughing with her hand on his chest. They looked like a couple. Not a first meeting. Not awkward or tentative. Comfortable. Familiar. She was leaning in, like she wanted him closer. I stared at that image longer than I should have. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the casualness of it. The softness on her face. The way she looked like herself. Maybe more than she did with me. I didn't know if they'd met before, and honestly, I didn't care. The betrayal wasn't in how far it had gone. It was that it had started at all. And the fact that she walked out of our shared life to explore someone else's touch while pretending to nurture her own creative process made it worse than anything physical ever could. I told Marcus he could go. He said he'd forward the timestamped video and logs later that night. I thanked him and turned off my phone. I didn't want any more information. I had enough. That night, I didn't say a word. Ivy came home just after 10, still glowing, still humming something under her breath. Her perfume was different, warmer, muskier. She smelled like hotel lobby candles and citrus. She kissed my cheek and dropped onto the couch next to me, tucked her legs under herself like nothing had changed. Said the workshop was transformative. She told me all about how they molded wax with intention, how the instructor said scent could unlock old traumas. I listened. I nodded. I asked questions, acted engaged. Not because I was confused or trying to trip her up. I just wanted to see how far she'd go. How deep the fiction ran. She never flinched. Never hesitated. Not once. I looked her dead in the eye as she told me how her hands still smelled like sandalwood. And that's when something inside me shifted. I'd always been the provider, the safe place, the one who handled the logistics so she could live in feeling. I made excuses for her when she forgot bills, covered for her when she missed obligations, created a world where she never had to explain herself to anyone. And in return, she created a second life behind my back and smiled in my face like I was too dull to notice. But she had underestimated something. I didn't get where I am by missing patterns. I just loved her too much to analyze the data. Until now. The next morning, I called my lawyer. Cassandra Mendez. Elite, discreet, terrifying when crossed. She remembered me immediately. Asked how serious it was. I told her I'd be in her office at 10 a.m. sharp. She said she'd be ready. Then I began the process. Quietly. Meticulously. I started listing out everything I'd purchased for Ivy during our marriage. The studio setup. The design work. The laptop, tablet, art supplies, travel, promotions. I pulled bank statements, matched them to itemized purchases, flagged anything with her name attached. I opened a secure folder and began organizing everything into categories. Assets I owned before marriage, joint use purchases, and things acquired exclusively for her creative career. Because the truth was, her independent life only existed because I built the foundation under it. And if she thought she could betray me without consequence, she was about to learn what happens when the man behind your success decides he's done making you look like the genius. I sat in Cassandra's office the next morning in a gray suit I hadn't worn in over a year, and when she asked me to tell her everything, I didn't flinch. I laid it all out, how long we'd been married, how much I'd supported Ivy's career, how her income was negligible and her lifestyle fully subsidized by mine, how I had documented everything she used, owned, or built since we said, I do. I showed her the photos Marcus sent, the Tinder profile, the messages I screenshotted. She listened without interruption, taking sharp, efficient notes, her pen slicing across the page like it wanted blood. When I finished, she looked up and said, "We'll bury her." There was no venom in her voice. Just clarity. Strategy. That was the moment I stopped being the betrayed husband and started being the man Ivy forgot I could be. I didn't file that day. Cassandra said we'd prepare the documents first, get everything aligned before serving her. She wanted to go scorched earth, but I told her no. I didn't want drama. I wanted precision. I wanted everything she took for granted to quietly vanish around her while she was still lighting candles and humming to herself. So I began the process. Quiet. Surgical. First, I started closing the convenience loops, the ones that made her days seamless. The shared Amazon account disappeared. The Uber credits I loaded monthly gone. The prepaid yoga membership I funded? Canceled. I let her think it was an error with the card. She texted me about it. I told her I'd check into it. I never did. Then I called the co-working studio where she rented space twice a week, the one where I had been paying 6 months ahead at a time. Told them not to renew her slot. I removed my card from her design software subscription, let the next payment bounce. I stopped her recurring art box deliveries. Cut off the shipping label credits I'd set up through my business account. I pulled every thread one by one, like unraveling a sweater while the person wearing it still thought it was keeping them warm. She didn't notice at first. A few hiccups here and there, some mild frustration, but nothing alarming. She was still in the honeymoon phase of her betrayal, still smiling, still texting me from across the apartment like we were in some whimsical love story. But I had already left. She just didn't know it yet. And then came the art. Her career, or at least the image of it, was propped up on pillars I built. Ivy wasn't part of the scene on her own. She didn't attend networking events. She didn't manage her inbox. She didn't negotiate commission pricing or deal with gallery contracts. I did. Or, more accurately, my contacts did. I'd hired a small creative PR agency to help grow her following, refine her brand voice, and get her placed in curated collections. She thought it was all organic. She loved saying things like, "My work speaks for itself." But art, like everything else, is a business. And businesses need infrastructure. I had the keys to all of it. So I started shutting doors. First, I called the PR agency. I told them we were terminating the contract, effective immediately. No need for discussion. I'd paid for the next month, but I wasn't interested in the rest. They understood. Then I contacted the gallery curator who was considering her for a women's spring showcase. She was a friend of a friend. A favor, really. I told her we'd decided to pause Ivy's promotional campaigns, that she wasn't in the right headspace, and it wouldn't reflect well if the collection didn't sell. That was all it took. No bad press. Just a cold shoulder. I didn't sabotage her directly. I didn't send emails or expose her. I just withdrew. And when you're standing on a ledge someone else built for you, all it takes is one step back for the whole thing to collapse. I went through every connection I had and quietly revoked access. No more favors. No more introductions. No more reposts. Her Instagram stopped growing. Her inbox stopped filling. She thought the algorithm was acting up. I watched her pace the studio for hours, fiddling with her palette, refreshing her phone. "It's weird," she said one day. "I was getting so much traction last month, and now it's just dead." I told her it was probably a seasonal dip, that she should focus on the work and not the numbers. She nodded and smiled, said I was right, kissed me on the cheek. And that's when I knew she still hadn't felt it yet. The ground was giving out from under her, and she was too high on the fantasy to see it. That night, while she painted in silence, I poured a drink and looked at our prenup. It wasn't ironclad, but it was thorough. We'd signed it when we married. It covered assets earned before the wedding, joint investments, and gifts. But there was a clause, one I insisted on, gently, years ago, that anything acquired for the primary purpose of one spouse's creative, intellectual, or professional advancement during the marriage would be considered revocable property in the event of breach of trust. Cassandra loved that clause, said it gave us everything we needed to make sure Ivy didn't walk away with a single brushstroke she hadn't earned. She'd have her personal items, of course. Clothes, keepsakes, some small personal furniture. But the studio? Gone. The equipment? Gone. The brand, the website, the materials, the custom-made desk, the triptychs I funded, the limited-run giclée prints I paid to have framed? Mine. And when it was all gone, she'd be left with exactly what she had when we met. A dream. And empty hands. The only question left was when to tell her. I wasn't in a rush. Some revenge roars. Mine would whisper. Then slam. I waited another week before pulling the trigger. Everything was in place. Documents prepared, assets protected, her access revoked in ways so gradual she hadn't fully pieced it together yet. She still kissed me in the mornings, still lit candles before dinner, still walked barefoot through the apartment like she owned the space. But there was a difference now. Her glow had dimmed. Her art had slowed. She'd started complaining about the off feeling in the air, like her energy was being blocked, like her intuition wasn't firing right. I wanted to laugh. There was no cosmic misalignment. Her world was collapsing, and I was the gravity shift. The night before I had her served, we had dinner like usual. She made a lentil stew, lit a beeswax pillar in the center of the table, and played a playlist called Creative Bloom. She looked tired, not physically, but spiritually, like she was finally realizing she was running out of magic tricks. "I feel disconnected lately," she said, pushing her spoon through the broth. "Like, something's closing in, and I don't know what it is." I nodded. "Maybe it's just time for a reset." She smiled, soft and confused. "Yeah, maybe." I didn't say anything else. I let the silence sit there between us, thick and final. The next morning, at 9:48 a.m., our doorman handed her a cream envelope. Inside, divorce papers. Clean. Brutal. with attachments outlining revocation of all shared services, a list of assets reverting to me, and a summary of the clause she'd forgotten about. The one she signed because she trusted me. Cassandra made sure everything was airtight. The delivery was intentional. Early enough to ruin her day, late enough that I wouldn't have to see her reaction. I was already gone by the time she opened it. I left the apartment an hour earlier, suitcase packed, keys on the counter. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. Everything I needed to say was in that envelope. My phone lit up with her name exactly 17 minutes later. I let it ring. Then again. Voicemail. Then came the texts. What is this? Are you serious? Can we talk? Please. I muted the thread. I sat at a hotel bar downtown, sipping bourbon while watching her calls roll in like waves. 32 missed calls in the first 2 hours. Then silence. Then a single message. Please just talk to me. I didn't mean for it to get this far. That made me laugh. This far. As if any of this was an accident. As if you can trip and fall into someone else's arms and then lie about it to your husband every day for weeks. As if intention mattered now. What mattered was the outcome. And the outcome was this. She had traded everything for a night with a stranger. And I had taken back the life I built for her, piece by piece, without her even noticing until the walls were already gone. Over the next week, I watched from a distance as the reality settled in. Her studio was packed up. Her website went dark. Her art socials flatlined. She posted a vague story about taking time to heal and reconnecting with inner purpose. I didn't respond. I didn't show up. I didn't give her closure. That was part of the punishment. She started emailing me, begging, but in her signature poetic way. I got lost. I thought I needed more. I was wrong. You were my center. I didn't see how much I was standing on you until you moved. Please, can we try again? I read every word, then deleted them. She called once more. I answered, said nothing. She sobbed into the silence, whispered my name over and over, like it could unlock something. I let her speak. Then I hung up. That was the last time we ever spoke. I changed my number. I moved cities. Cassandra handled everything else. She tried to fight it, hired some desperate lawyer who claimed she was entitled to half of the brand we built together. Cassandra ate him alive in mediation. It wasn't a fight. It was a slow-motion public beheading. In the end, Ivy walked away with her personal clothes, a few pieces of unsold art, and the realization that everything else had been mine all along. I never went public with what she did. Never exposed her. Never shamed her. That wasn't the kind of revenge I wanted. I wanted silence. I wanted absence. I wanted her to feel the cold echo of a door she couldn't reopen. And she did. That I know. Sometimes, when I scroll through art forums or design spaces, I still see traces of her name. Old pieces. Archived bios. Echoes of someone who once believed she could build a life without consequence. But those echoes fade. She made her choice. And I made mine. I gave her the freedom she claimed to crave. No routine. No safety net. No husband to lean on. Just the open sky, and the silence that follows when the only person who truly believed in you stops looking back. If someone used your success to build their own life, then tossed you aside, would you let them keep what they made with your help?